5 famous bourbons, all sitting on shelves right now, all charging prices completely disconnected from what's actually in the bottle. And millions of people keep buying them every single year, not because they're exceptional, because they're famous. Here's what smart drinkers figured out a long time ago. Fame and quality are two completely different things in bourbon. One costs money to build, the other costs craft. Number 5 has one of the most recognizable bottles in America. You've seen it at every wedding, every corporate event, every bar in the country. At $45, it delivers exactly what a $30 bourbon delivers. Number 1 is the bottle people buy when they want to look like they know bourbon without actually knowing bourbon. At $60, it's the most successfully marketed mediocre liquid in the entire category. Today, we're exposing 5 famous bourbons where reputation is doing all the work the whiskey should be doing, and revealing 5 smart alternatives that deliver more quality, more honesty, and more value. By the end, you'll know exactly which famous bottles to walk past, and which 5 prove that the best bourbon isn't always the most famous bourbon. Let's start with number 5. Number 5, Maker's Mark. That red wax drip, that wheat-forward sweetness, that distinctive square bottle that tells everyone at the bar you made a choice. At $35 to $45, Maker's Mark has achieved something remarkable. It convinced an entire generation that approachable equals premium. Here's the problem. Approachable does not equal premium. It equals approachable. Maker's Mark is bottled at 90 proof, 45% ABV, better than the legal minimum. Fine. But fine doesn't justify the premium positioning Beam Suntory has built around this bottle for decades. The mash bill replaces rye with wheat, creating a softer, gentler profile. Caramel, vanilla, light fruit, a short, sweet finish. Nothing challenging, nothing memorable, nothing that makes you put down your phone and pay attention. This is bourbon engineered to never offend anyone. And bourbon that never offends anyone has never really excited anyone either. The wax dipping process that creates that signature look? Purely cosmetic. Done by hand, yes. Does it affect what's inside? Absolutely not. You're paying for the aesthetics of craft, not craft itself. Here's what makes Maker's Mark particularly frustrating. It used to be exceptional for its price. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Maker's at $22 was a genuine value. At $45 in 2026, it's a famous name, charging famous prices for ordinary liquid. In blind tastings against other $40 to $45 bourbons, Maker's Mark consistently finishes in the bottom half. Not because it tastes bad, because everything around it has improved, while Maker's stayed exactly the same. The red wax didn't change, the bottle didn't change, the recipe didn't change, the price did. That's number 5. 4 more famous bottles where you're paying for the name, not the liquid. Number 4, Bulleit Bourbon. This is what happens when a brand story becomes more valuable than what's inside the bottle. The Bulleit mythology is compelling. A frontier whiskey recipe, a lost ancestor, a family legacy rediscovered and brought to market. None of that mythology is in your glass. At $30 to $35, Bulleit Bourbon is a sourced whiskey, meaning Bulleit doesn't distill it. For years, the liquid came primarily from MGP ingredients in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the same distillery that supplies dozens of craft brands with the exact same whiskey at wildly different price points. Bottled at 90 proof, chill-filtered, high rye mash bill that promises spice but delivers mild suggestion. The flavor profile: light caramel, gentle rye spice that shows up briefly then disappears. A short finish that leaves nothing to contemplate. Bulleit's high rye positioning promises bold, spicy character. What it delivers is the whisper of that character, polished into submission for the widest possible audience. Here's the test that exposes Bulleit. Pour it next to any high rye bourbon at similar proof. Rittenhouse rye at $25. Old Overholt Bonded at $22, and the Bold Frontier Spirit positioning collapses immediately. Those bottles actually deliver rye character. Bulleit borrows the language of rye boldness without providing it. Diageo, one of the largest spirits companies in the world, acquired Bulleit and has spent millions creating the image of a small batch frontier whiskey while producing it at industrial scale. The bottle looks like something from a different era. The liquid inside tastes like something made for everyone. one. At $20, Bulleit would be acceptable. At $35, you're buying advertising. That's number 4. The top 3 are more famous, more expensive, and more disappointing. Number 3. Woodford Reserve. This is the bourbon at every upscale restaurant. The default good bourbon for people who want to signal taste without researching taste. At $45 to $55, Woodford Reserve is beautiful. The bottle is genuinely elegant. The distillery in Versailles, Kentucky is genuinely historic. The production story, pot stills, triple distillation, careful maturation is genuinely compelling. The bourbon itself, it's fine. Bottled at 90.4 proof, chill filtered for consistency, artificially colored to maintain visual uniformity across batches. The flavor delivers what the packaging promises: approachable complexity, dried fruit, chocolate, vanilla, baking spice, everything harmonious, everything controlled, everything designed not to surprise you. This is bourbon made for the restaurant experience. For the moment someone orders something nice without wanting to think about it. For the glass that looks good on a white tablecloth. None of that is wrong, but none of it justifies $55 either. Here's the uncomfortable math. Brown-Forman, Woodford's parent company, also makes Old Forester, a bourbon using similar Kentucky straight bourbon production, similar mash bill, higher proof options, and dramatically better value. Old Forester, 1920. Prohibition style sits at 115 proof, non-chill filtered at this intensity. Dramatically more character, more texture, more presence. Price, $50 to $55. Same as Woodford Reserve, same company, same state. Better bourbon for the same money. Woodford Reserve survives on positioning, the elegant bottle, the restaurant placement, the approval of people who equate beautiful packaging with quality liquid. In blind tastings against other $50 bourbons, Woodford Reserve consistently loses to higher proof alternatives. Tasters describe it as smooth, easy, pleasant. At a 5-star restaurant, those words belong in reviews. At $55, they're indictments. That's number 3. 2 more famous bottles that are robbing you blind in 2026. Number 2. Blanton's Original. This one requires a conversation about manufactured scarcity, secondary market psychology, and the most effective bourbon marketing campaign of the last 20 years. At retail, Blanton's Original costs around $65. Finding it at retail in 2026 is nearly impossible. On secondary markets, it sells for $150 to $250, sometimes more. Here's what smart drinkers know that everyone paying secondary prices doesn't. Blanton's Original is a good bourbon, not a great bourbon, not a $65 bourbon that somehow becomes exceptional at $250. Good bourbon in a ball stopper bottle with a horse and jockey figurine on the cork, bottled at 93 proof. Single barrel, which means genuine variation. Some barrels are better than others, but the baseline, the average Blanton's experience at whatever price you're paying: caramel, vanilla, light citrus, medium finish, well made, unmemorable. The kind of bourbon that impresses people unfamiliar with bourbon because the bottle is undeniably beautiful. Buffalo Trace Distillery, which produces Blanton's, has not dramatically increased production. Whether that's genuine capacity limitation or strategic scarcity to maintain mystique is a question their marketing team won't answer directly. What we know, the secondary market for Blanton's has created a mythology where the difficulty of finding it becomes confused with the quality of what's inside. Scarcity is not a flavor note. The horse on the cork is not a production choice that improves the whiskey. And paying $250 for $65 bourbon because it was hard to find is the definition of letting marketing make your decisions for you. At retail, Blanton's is overpriced, but defensible. At secondary, it's the most successful instance of manufactured desire in bourbon history. That's number 2. One more famous bottle, the one that built its entire reputation on being the bottle smart people supposedly buy. Number 1. Knob Creek 9-year. This will generate the most disagreement. Good. Disagreement means the point landed. Knob Creek has spent 3 decades positioning itself as the thinking person's bourbon, the choice of drinkers who've moved past the basics, the bottle that signals you're serious without going full enthusiast. At $40 to $50, it trades on that positioning relentlessly. 100 proof, 9 years aged. Bold marketing language about pre-prohibition style, about serious bourbon for serious drinkers. Here's the reality the marketing doesn't discuss. Knob Creek is made by Beam Suntory, one of the largest spirits conglomerates on earth, in massive quantities. The small batch language on the label refers to a production category, not an actual small batch. The flavor delivers a competent 100 proof bourbon character caramel, vanilla, oak, light grain. Everything you expect, nothing you didn't. At 100 proof, the texture improves over 90 proof alternatives. The finish has more presence. These are real advantages. But here's the problem. You're paying a $20 to $25 premium over genuinely superior alternatives that nobody famous is promoting. Wild Turkey, 101 proof, 6 to 8 years aged, bolder, spicier, more honest, costs $25 to $30. Evan Williams, bottled in bond, 100 proof, government-regulated quality standards, 4 years aged minimum, no production shortcuts, costs $15. Knob Creek, 9-year at $45, offers marginal improvements over $15 alternatives while charging triple the price. The 9-year age statement is real. The quality premium it delivers? Far smaller than the price premium suggests. In blind tastings, Knob Creek 9-year consistently loses to Wild Turkey 101 at half the price, loses to Old Grandad 114 at 60% of the price, loses to Russell's Reserve 10-year, a better-made, better-aged bourbon at similar prices. Knob Creek doesn't survive on blind tasting results. It survives on 3 decades of marketing to drinkers who want to feel sophisticated without doing the research that leads to actual sophistication. The irony: the bourbon that built its brand on being the smart choice is exactly what smart drinkers walk past in 2026. Those are the 5 famous bourbons where reputation is outpacing reality, where marketing is doing the work the liquid should be doing, where famous has become a substitute for exceptional. But here's what actually matters. Knowing which bottles to avoid is only half the value. The other half is knowing what to buy instead. Everything we just exposed shares the same characteristic. They're famous because they were marketed to be famous, not because the liquid demanded recognition. The bourbon industry learned a long time ago that building a brand is cheaper than building a better bourbon, that a beautiful bottle costs less than exceptional maturation, that a compelling story generates more sales than a compelling liquid. The 5 smart alternatives understand something different. If the bourbon is exceptional, the reputation follows eventually. You just have to be patient enough to find it before everyone else does. These aren't obscure bottles. They're not hard to find. They're sitting on shelves right now, fairly priced, waiting for drinkers who've stopped letting famous do their thinking for them. Let's start with number 5. Number 5, Buffalo Trace. Yes, it's also hard to find at retail. Yes, it has its own allocation mythology, but when found at $25 to $30, Buffalo Trace represents something the famous bourbons above have forgotten. Straightforward excellence at an honest price. 90 proof, well-made, consistent, award-winning at a price that doesn't require you to justify the purchase. The flavor delivers caramel, vanilla, and spice with genuine balance. Not exciting, not challenging, just well-made bourbon at an honest price. This is the entry point. The bourbon you recommend to the Maker's Mark drinker who's ready to spend the same money and get more back. At its retail price, Buffalo Trace outvalues Maker's Mark, Bulleit, and Woodford Reserve simultaneously. Number 4, Wild Turkey 101. This is the bourbon that's been embarrassing expensive bottles for 40 years without getting the credit it deserves. 101 proof, 6 to 8 years aged. Bold, assertive, unapologetically itself. The flavor profile delivers what Bulleit promises and never provides. Genuine rye spice, deep caramel, vanilla, and a long, warming finish that lingers and evolves. Master distiller Eddie Russell has been making this bourbon for decades. The consistency is real. The quality is real. The price, $28 to $32, is almost insultingly honest for what's in the bottle. In blind tastings, Wild Turkey 101 consistently beats bourbon costing 3 to 4 times as much. Not occasionally, routinely. This is the smart alternative to Knob Creek. 101 proof versus 100 proof. Similar character, half the price, better result.
Number 3, 4 Roses Single Barrel. This is where Woodford Reserve money actually delivers premium results. Number 3, 4 Roses Single Barrel. This is where Woodford Reserve money actually delivers premium results. At $50 to $55, 4 Roses Single Barrel brings something the famous alternatives can't match. Genuine single barrel variation and a unique production philosophy. 4 Roses uses 10 distinct recipes, 5 mash bills crossed with 2 yeast strains, creating the most complex production approach in Kentucky bourbon. The single barrel expression showcases that complexity. Each bottle comes from 1 barrel, 1 recipe, 1 moment in time. 100 proof, not chill filtered at this intensity. Natural variation that makes each bottle slightly different from the last. The flavor delivers rich fruit, floral complexity, caramel, and spice with texture that Woodford Reserve's chill filtration specifically eliminates. At the same price as Woodford Reserve, Four Roses Single Barrel isn't just better value, it's a completely different level of craftsmanship. Number 2, Old Grandad 114. This is the bourbon the industry doesn't want you to discover. 114 proof, high rye mash bill, bold, spicy, intensely flavored at a price that should be embarrassing for every premium bourbon on this list. The flavor explodes. Rye spice, dark fruit, charred oak, vanilla, and warming heat that demands attention and rewards patience. This isn't background bourbon. This isn't pour and forget liquid. This is bourbon that insists you pay attention, and when you do, delivers more complexity than bottles charging triple the price. In blind tastings against Blanton's Woodford Reserve and Knob Creek, Old Grandad 114 at $28 consistently finishes ahead. Not occasionally, consistently. This is the secret that smart drinkers have been keeping from casual drinkers for 20 years. The bottle that looks like it belongs in your grandfather's cabinet, but drinks like it belongs in a blind tasting of Kentucky's finest. At $28, Old Grandad 114 is the single best value in American whiskey. Number 1, Henry McKenna 10-year bottled in bond. This is the bottle that ends the argument. $35 to $40, 10 years aged, 100 proof, bottled in bond, meaning it meets government-regulated quality standards that most famous bourbons aren't required to achieve. And it won Best in Show at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, the most prestigious blind tasting in the spirits industry, beating every famous bourbon on today's list and hundreds of others. Best bourbon in the world, $35. The flavor delivers deep caramel, baking spice, dried fruit, and mature oak with a long, complex finish that evolves for minutes. The 10-year age shows up in every sip, rounded, integrated, patient. This is what 10 years of honest maturation produces when a distillery isn't spending the marketing budget that would require charging $150 to recoup for the price of one bottle of Blanton's at secondary market. You could buy 4 bottles of Henry McKenna 10-year, the bourbon that beat it in blind competition. The math isn't subtle, the choice isn't difficult. Henry McKenna, 10-year bottled in bond, is proof that the best bourbon in 2026 doesn't have famous packaging, doesn't have celebrity endorsements, doesn't have a horse on the cork. It just has exceptional liquid at an honest price. That's worth every penny. One rule saves you from every overpriced famous bourbon on this list. Buy specifications, not stories. When you're standing in front of a bourbon shelf, ignore the bottle design. Ignore the brand heritage printed on the label. Ignore whether you've seen it at bars before. Look for 3 things. Proof, 95 minimum, 100 preferred, 114 is better still. Age, if they're hiding it behind small batch language, assume it's young. Production, bottled in bond, is a government quality guarantee. It means something. Every famous bourbon that failed today failed because its story was better than its specifications. Every smart alternative succeeded because its specifications spoke for themselves. Famous is what brands build when the liquid can't do it alone. Quality is what you taste when it can. The 5 famous bourbons only dumb people still buy in 2026. Maker's Mark, Bulleit, Woodford Reserve, Blanton's at secondary prices, and Knob Creek 9-year. Not bad bourbons, famous bourbons charging famous prices for ordinary liquid. The 5 smart alternatives: Buffalo Trace, Wild Turkey 101, Four Roses Single Barrel, Old Grandad 114, and Henry McKenna 10-year bottled in bond. All deliver more proof, more character, more honesty, and more value than everything they replace. Smart drinkers figured this out years ago. They stopped buying famous and started buying quality. In 2026, there's no excuse for paying premium prices for average liquid just because the bottle is recognizable. Subscribe to Cask Index. Next one, 5 famous Scotch brands only dumb people still buy in 2026. We're Cask Index. We'll see you in the next one.